All right, let's bring in our senior political correspondent, Glen McGregor, who's been following closely the last 3.5 hours, give or take. Glen, the takeaways for you here.
Well, David Johnston spent a lot of the time on the defensive, defending initially in the first, say, half hour of the hearing, defending his own integrity and his relationship with Justin Trudeau and the Trudeau family. He faced repeated questions from Conservative MPs about the fact that he had been, as their leader calls him, a ski buddy of Justin Trudeau. David Johnston says that isn't the case, that they had a condominium, that he and his wife had a condominium at Mont Tremblant, a ski resort in the Laurentians, and that on 4 or 5 occasions, the Trudeau children, the sons of Pierre Elliott Trudeau, would come by and park their car there and ski with Johnson's daughters. And then he said that he didn't really have much contact with Justin Trudeau in the ensuing 40 years, even at the time when he was president of McGill University in Montreal and Justin Trudeau was a student there. Wasn't really until Trudeau was elected prime minister in 2015 and moved into the grounds at Rideau Hall, effectively becoming Johnson's neighbor. He said he'd hoped that his grandchildren could play with Trudeau's children at Rideau Hall, but it never happened. Then he had to kind of defend the report itself, and took a while for MPs on the committee, Todd, to kind of shift into this mode and start asking more pointed questions about that, about why he wouldn't call a public inquiry. Michael Chong, a Conservative MP who, as we know, was a target of Chinese interference efforts, was very effective on this point, saying, listen, we have had in this country public inquiries, royal commissions of inquiry into matters that delve into classified materials, particularly the public inquiry into the bombing of the Air India flight, and also into the inquiry into the Mahar Arar affair, both of those involving lots of classified information. Johnson's response was that may be true, but this is still not the best vehicle to get information about this out into the public, and to provide this information to MPs in a quick manner. He noted, in fact, one of the most famous Canadian public inquiries in recent history, the Macdonald Commission, that looked into activities of the RCMP, led to the creation ultimately of CSIS. That took 5 years, and it was, of course, a very expensive process. So Johnson's saying, really, the best way to do this, it's urgent. We have to deal with this now. Got to move quickly. Let's do these public hearings, which he thinks he can do over the next 5 months. Big question, though, is whether MPs on this committee or in the House of Commons at large are going to buy it. Remember that they voted just last week to have David Johnston removed as the special rapporteur, calling him to step down and have somebody else put into that role. He has not heeded that. He told the committee, because he said it was based on false information. This premise that he had some kind of personal relationship and therefore a conflict of interest in this role, he denies both those things. I don't know that this testimony, Todd, is going to make a whole lot of difference to people who are watching this. I think a lot of minds are made up by those MPs sitting around the table at the Procedure and House Affairs Committee and in the House of Commons. But we'll see what they say about it in the next few hours in response.
Yeah, just building on what you said, it was interesting that the MPs raised the fact that a majority in Parliament have voted for him to go for a public inquiry. And they said, look, you often say you respect Parliament. You should be respecting the will of Parliament, which is that you need to step aside and there needs to be a public inquiry. What happens now, Glenn? The testimony is over. Does the pressure continue on the Trudeau government now in the weeks and months ahead? What's your take on what we're going to see?
Yeah, I think there will be more pressure, and it may depend if there are more leaks and more damaging information that comes out, potentially about what the government knew about this and what they did or did not do in response. So far, it looks like both sides are kind of digging in their heels. David Johnston clearly intending to stay on this role. He's not going to step down. He's not going to resign, despite what MPs say is, at the very least, a perception of a conflict of interest. He denies there is one, and he's not going to move on. And also, the Prime Minister's office doesn't have any inclination to remove him from this position, at least at this point. So it looks like these hearings that he wants to hold are going to go ahead. They're going to proceed. There may be questions about whether, say, Conservatives decide to participate in this. Johnston was emphatic in thanking Aaron O'Toole, the former Conservative Party leader, for his contributions that partially made it in his report, although that information seemed to get to Johnston late, and wasn't necessarily all included in the report that was issued earlier this month. But we'll also have to see whether Pierre Poilievre or other current officials of the Conservative Party would want to participate in these public hearings. Johnston seems to think it's mostly going to be focused on Chinese diaspora, that is Chinese Canadians who may have been affected by interference and some of the other things we've been hearing about, like these police stations in certain cities that have cropped up. So it looks like he's moving ahead, and it looks like MPs in the opposition, all the opposition parties, are opposed to him continuing this role. It's kind of an impasse, hard to say, over the summer as MPs return to their ridings when Parliament recesses, whether or not the pressure is going to stay on the government to the same extent to take a different course.
Glen McGregor, our parliamentary correspondent, political correspondent in Ottawa, with the latest 3.5 hours of testimony today from David Johnston, the special rapporteur on Chinese interference. Thank you, Glen. Always a pleasure.